Good afternoon, or good evening, or good morning. Depends where you're at the world. So thank you for joining today. Today is a special guest. We're bringing in Grace Grossman, and I'm just waiting for her to come in. In the meantime, we can talk about other things. So there's been some great things happening in this world here of all of us in Substack. One of the things that I've been doing is we've been working on a couple projects. One project was the whole. We actually made some progress in that world, and I'm kind of excited about this. We a special guest, or the audience actually was talking about, you need a romantic angle on this, and they were actually giving us feedback and so forth. And one of the things we did over the weekend after the podcast, we actually sat down, Hassan and I, and we were kind of like debating what should we add, what we should not add. And one of the things that we did was we came up with a storyline, and so much. And I'm still working on it, and that's part of the journey of doing the whole, was to bring people in, getting some feedback and getting some understanding what was going on. And so I'm getting a lot more excited. We've made some breakthroughs on the writing, the storyline, and so forth. A couple other things. So we're developing that. That's going to be kind of cool. Give me 1 second. I'm going to see if we're live on Substack. So just give me 1 second here. So I don't lose my, where are we? We're not live on Substack. Why has that not happened? This is like the second time that this did not work for me on Substack. I am streaming on Substack. So it shows that I'm streaming on Substack. So that's good. If I can find it. Oh, there it is. I'm able to find it. So, all right. The other thing is that, so what I'm working on is with on the whole is a storyline. We kind of broke through on that, and we started to talk about certain things, and how we're going to tell the story and so forth. And so during the World War II, I don't know if you guys know this, but there was a lot of songs being produced, and sometimes some of these folk songs were actually being regurgitated. Some of the lyrics changed, and there was a very famous song at the time, or it was a folk song that came through the northern part of Italy, where they would sing it in the rice fields, and it was called Bella Donna or something like that, or Bella Ciao. It was Bella Ciao. Sorry. So that was kind of cool. So we were able to see that, and we were able to research a little more about that, and that became more of the theme of our storyline, and we've kind of like worked that through in. And so thanks to you all, we're actually starting to incorporate some of your suggestions and recommendations and things like that, because we're seeing that we're missing some gaps. So this is the best part of doing this live, the whole sharing our research, providing some insight of what's going on and so forth, and basically trying to share the process of writing, because this is this is not an easy thing sometimes, and we kind of go through a bunch of things to get there, and sometimes it looks really easy when the product looks finished, but this is actually the start of writing. This is the start of making things going now. The hope is we get further along into the book process, and we start writing chapters, and I think the next phase is my goal now is to create chapters within the books and start filling in content, factual content that we can use, personal stories, see where we can add certain things, and hopefully we get into a rhythm where we're actually filling out the chapters and making sure they all kind of like sync from one chapter to another. So that's what we're doing there. Another thing that we're doing that I'm doing, I want to emphasize there's a couple of things I've done on my Substack that I don't think that has been fully explained. But one of the things that I'm doing is every Monday is more of a philosophy type of newsletter or article that I write, and that's something that I just share a daily life or a thought process or expand something that a couple of substackers are working with, and kind of going through that process and kind of like sharing our conversations as a whole, as a community, and kind of like give everybody an opportunity to, and really just trying to lift people up. That's really what my goal is, to lift people up into the community, and hopefully they get some recognition and some promotion as part of it, but also share some of their writings and some of their thought process or the discussions I have on the sidebar, which I think some of them are pretty interesting and pretty cool. And so you're starting to see more of that on in my Substacks. Then Wednesdays are my little mini series. Most of you have been following the hospital stay. I'm going to make sure everybody understand. I'm like weeks ahead of those articles that I post or those storylines, and it's because it's true how I feel. It's how I feel at the moment, how it's going on, and it's takes some time for me to adjust, and writing about that process does me two things. Number one, it helps me to put it out there, make me like try to explain the situation, have a better understanding what I'm going through, and put it on paper. But the other thing is, my philosophy on the positive pen was always show a beacon of hope. So my story, the guinea pig here, I want to take that story, and hopefully that becomes a beacon of hope of other people, that they can see that there's always going to be challenges, but how you persevere and how you move forward and how you do things really determines on your attitude and your behavior and so forth. So that's that one. But my new series is called Remy's Journey, which has been a very popular book. It's one of my best sellers on Amazon, and a lot of people love it. And it's Remy. Actually, Remy is not here right now, but Remy is our dog, who's a support dog, and Marie hasn't had children, so she uses the dog as one of those, comfort, and she uses it as a support dog. She couldn't have children, and so this is a way to help her, I guess, help her along the way, and which is great. Remy's a little lovable old dog, has a brother named Colt, and we've had him for 2 weeks, and it's been good, and it's been kind of cool. It's been because his mother is actually on a road trip somewhere else, but we have both dogs here, which is kind of great. But Remy has gone through a lot of changes, and it's in the perspective and voice of Remy. So it's through his eyes, it's through his interactions and things like that. So that's what we're doing with that one. So that's coming out. The first series of that book will be out. Well, so to kind of let you know, I always write on Substack first before I publish, and it's usually like a rough draft per se. And then what I'll do is once I've kind of gone through the series, then I'll publish the book. And through that publication, it's through a lot of more editing and a lot more content's added. There's a better flow to it. I kind of like figure out what can I change. Sometimes I rewrite a whole chapter. And Earn Not Given was a prime example where I rewrote the first chapter and rewrote some of the, not rewrote it, but I've added a lot of content in it, which became a bigger book overall. But Remy's Journey is still a lovable dog, still has his rat pack, and there has been a lot of significant change in his life. And it's really talking about his story, what's been going on, how he's been adjusting, how he's been challenged, and really from a a dog's point of view. He's communicating with his brother, his friends, and kind of going through that journey of life through a life of a dog. So that's going to be exciting, and I'll be mixing that up here and there along with the whole. And so that's happening there. And usually those books will take at least, I don't know, like Remy's book takes about, maybe I would say about 18 chapters, or maybe shorter than that. I don't know, but it might take 18 days to write it out. And I've already been writing it out, so I've been publishing it here and there. So Wednesdays is my mini series, my little mini books. And then on Fridays, I do promote the guest that comes up on Monday. So you have a little bit of an insight of who they are, what they're about, why we're bringing them on. And typically in this podcast called Stories, Soul Work, and Substack, what we're talking about is the work that they put in, why are they using writing or art to help them to express what they're feeling and so forth. Just like how I do it, I use writing, and sometimes I used art to do that. So that's cool. I'm going to just make sure I check on her, and we're just, like I said, she hasn't shown up, so I hope she does. I hope everything's okay. She is in Costa Rica, and I'm looking forward to talking to her. We've collaborated in the past, and we've maintained our relationships throughout these years. So I'm looking forward to really connecting and having a conversation. So I hope everything's okay there. Back to these podcasts is really about the writers on Substack. I've really started to really focus on the writers on Substack, focusing on what they're doing, how they're doing, and using art to express. Now, I had a really interesting. Now, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in there. I'm reading the comments. So if you got a question about me or my writing or anything like that, please feel free to ask. I'm here open. I guess we're going to be like an open mic tonight until she arrives. If not, I'm okay doing this too. So either way, we're rocking it. So one of the questions was posed today, which I thought, no, it was the first time I'd been asked. It was just kind of cool. The daily thoughts, or the daily post that I put on Substack every day with a picture and comments. The person said, do you come up with a picture, or do you come up with a picture and a comment? Like, how do you come up with that? Now, just for everybody's thought process on how I do that is I do it in a combination of stuff, maybe different ways. One, I might come across scrolling through a social media post, and I see a picture, and it inspires me to write something about that picture. And then I post it on my social media, and I posted it on Substack, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So I do it on all four social media platforms. And I just leave it out there. It's really, at the end of the day, I'm not really thinking about it. It's just how I felt at the time and me posting it. Sometimes I ponder about life all the time. I guess I'm a philosopher in some ways, and I think about certain things, and then I will post it. And sometimes I create an AI image out of it, or I might find an image through Upsplash, which is part of Substack, and I go from there and I pull that out. And sometimes that happens to be more of what usually is happening in some ways. And then sometimes I might be in church, or I might be watching something, or I'm talking to somebody, and there is a discussion of some sort, and a phrase or word just triggers, and I will get on my phone and I'll write a few words or comment, so I remember it when I get back home and I have time to sit down and talk about it. And that is typically what is going on. So then when I do that, I go back home and I kind of look at that, or when I have a chance to sit down and just look through it, and then I kind of look through it and I say, okay, well, this is what I'm going to write. And then From there, either I find a picture or I create one through AI or I have one myself, then I'll post it that way. So there's really, I mean, that was a really great question today, which kind of took me to the side, pulled me to the side, and I went, oh, that's interesting. I didn't really had time to think about it. A lot of times in the morning time, it's really me writing down in my journal, just expressing a desire of the day or whatever that is. And if I feel more of sharing that, I will. And sometimes that's early in the morning. Sometimes I, like in the last couple of weeks, I haven't been really posting early in the morning because I've had a really busy week or a busy couple weeks, and I'm trying to get myself in a routine and so forth. Um, just let me check one more time. Okay. All right. So she might, I know she had I know she was in between something, so hopefully she can make it. If not, we can always reschedule this. I don't really. If you have questions or anything, please feel free to shoot one, and then I'll respond if you have a question. I have no problem with that. The other thing I want to touch base, so that's sort of what Positive Pen is coming along. And another thing that I'm working on, which I think is kind of cool, is I think it's really cool. So a couple weeks ago, I asked a bunch of authors who are published books to send me their copy and link and so forth. And what I've done was created an article that basically highlights every single one of them. But on top of that, there is a way that I also posted it on my Substack. There is a link to all the books on my Substack, so you can go on my link. You'll see, I think it says books by Substack writers, so it's up there. So you can go there and click on it and check that out. And I've been developing a website on the side, which has been kind of like off and on for the last 3 months, but I think we're getting closer to the launch date, and it needs to get launched because on there, what I'm doing is creating a depository of all the books of all these authors and putting them on there, and so that we have a way to connect with those authors on Substack. Because I believe it's, we got to promote each other. And I think that's a best way to do that. I'm hoping that's the best way. So eventually that is going to become like a monthly book type thing where I will recognize a few people and start putting like a book of the month type stuff where Substackers can go and look and maybe purchase their book and read their books and so forth, and really help cross promotion and help a lot of us that are trying to sell our books. And that is something that I'm trying to give back to the community. So I'm working on that on the side, and hopefully the launch date's 29th, so I don't really have much of a choice. So that's the launch date. That's when the news article comes out. That's when everybody will start marketing their books. And along with marketing their books, they're marketing other people's books. And I hope that you take a moment and look through their books, see what you think, and if you buy them, grateful you're the time to buy them and read them, because I think they're all. I mean, we all put our work on here, and we really put ourselves out there, and without you guys, we're, I know that for a fact. Without you, without you helping us, we wouldn't be here. And so it's really trying to give back to the community, give back to everybody else. And that's the idea behind this. And yes, I do have a website coming up, and some people have been asking, and has been asking, can I merchandise some of the things? Now, I don't really like to merchandise stuff because I don't really think of that. I think of myself as a writer first before I merchandise. So one of the things that I was asked this year, and I was just playing around was to create a calendar. And I was able to create a calendar based on the daily posts that I put on. And because people thought they were inspirational, so I created that. And that's coming in into the fold. And I've created one for the for 2026, but obviously, we're already almost halfway through. But the idea was I wanted to see if that was possible. But there's also other merchandising things that some of my art that I do and some of the things I do I'm going to put up there as a way for people. And I put in quotes in there in the art, or some of my actual paintings that I do. I can give you an example. This one is an actual painting that I painted. And this is actually the Northern Lights. I love the Northern Lights. I don't know if you guys knew that. I hope you guys did. But that was the Northern Lights was an awesome experience. And how that was an awesome experience. Hello, Randall. Was an awesome experience. And I can give you this story. We were up in Yukon, and I was working in the dead winter. And one of the things I was doing there, I was working in the oil fields, and I was my young 20s or something like that. And we were in a bar called Pistil 2, and it was in Yukon, Yellowknife, Yukon. And it was all guys, and I was wearing a concert from the Cult. And when I was wearing the Cult shirt, and that was something I went to go see the concert a couple months before in Vancouver. So, and then I went back to work, and I was up in the Yellowknife area, and we were just chilling out and drinking beers because there wasn't really much to do. And this other guy was wearing a t-shirt called Pistil 2. And I don't mean to cuss, but that was the name of the bar. And so we exchanged dirty and sweaty. We exchanged shirt, and we instantly became friends. And one of the things that we did was we drove up to the Northern Lights, and it was just gorgeous. Now, we're guys, and one of the things it was an awkward situation as well, but at the same time, you kind of wish you had someone you love with that you can go up there, but we didn't have much choice. It was just all guys up there, but we stood up there. I don't know if you ever saw the Northern Lights. If you do, please comment if you do. It's one of those moments. It's so surreal, and it's almost like you can't believe it's happening, because when you see the sky normally, you're looking up and you see the stars and all that, and sometimes you might see a certain planet, you might see the northern star, like all those little things, like all those are common. But this was like outside the norm, and you were sitting out there, and it's really cold too. It was like dead winter, but minus the cold, it was one of those moments that I was like, this is like it was jaw dropping. It was a jaw dropping moment where you sat there and you thought about life, and you thought about how small you were, and how your problems were so insignificant, and then you thought about the beauty behind it. You saw the lights, like kind of like memorizing you in a way that, and back then we didn't have phones, or like, it was just a picture memory. So when I painted that I was actually, when I painted it, I was like, like I was learning how to paint mountains. And I'll show you this. So this was like more me painting the mountains, and I was trying to figure out how to paint mountains, the curves, the color coordinations, and things like that. And then I was kind of like painting it like this at first. And as I was painting it, I didn't realize what I was doing. And then I looked at it and I was like, well, that's kind of cool. And then I turned it into, then during my painting, because I was painting freelancing, I turned it into the Northern Lights part. Now, when people look at it, they think it's waves. But reality is, my picture in my mind, it was mountains and the shadows and the defined lines, the tones from one to another, and trying to figure that out. So in my mind, that was the Northern Lights to me. That was my interpretation of it. So it was very abstract painting, and yeah, so it's kind of cool. Now, just going to check on her one more time. Well, it looks like she's not coming, so we're good to go. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop it into the chat. I'll answer them. We'll make this about us. How is that? So I thank you for everybody coming out there. Amy, Kimberly, Hassan, Gray, Mike, Barry, Rhonda. So I should talk about more of my painting. So I painted other things. I don't have them right with me, but one of the things I painted was I started painting during the pandemics, and I never really picked up the painting. I was always a jock. I was always considered like sports guy, um, like writing and painting. The arts wasn't really. No, don't get me wrong. I've always had interest in those areas. I love museums. I love architectural. I love music, all different kinds of music, except for rap and the urban type of stuff. I'm not really a fan of that, but I'm more into like the jazz and more into inspirational songs, Christians, and like it doesn't really matter. I'm all over. Even I actually had tickets to the Vancouver Symphony and actually went to the symphony, and it was like, if you ever been to one and you have a good like orchestra, it's really awesome. So like musicals, things like that, I've always enjoyed those things. So it's been kind of I loved it. I love that part of the world. But I would never picked up a paper and pen. Like, don't get me wrong, I always scribbled in my journal, but I never thought anything that my writing will become an inspiration to others or a book or something like that. I always thought about I would do it, but I never thought I would do that. So anyways, long story short, during the pandemic, things changed again in my life. It was things got challenging, things got moved on, and that really becomes part 2 of Earned Not Given, is the next book, which will come down later in a couple years maybe. I don't know. I have to figure out how I'm going to write that one. But that's that one. And then in there, I was met a lady, very as older lady, who was charming, kind, thoughtful, patient. And I went up to her one day and I said, and I was staying there as it was an Airbnb, and because I was in between moving. And I said, and she had a paint class and all that, and it was kind of cool. And I said, and this is just before the pandemic, and I said, I would love to learn how to paint. And she said, oh, that's great. What kind of painting do you want to do? And I said, I gave her a photo, and I said, this is the one I want to paint. And she looked at me and she says, have you ever painted before? And I said, no, I didn't paint. I don't paint. I never painted. And she looked at me again. She goes, well, yeah, that's going to be, well, we're going to try. And that's what she said. We're going to try. So I sat down and she taught me a few techniques and we were working through it and we're kind of like figuring that out. And one of the cool things about it is that she allowed me to express myself in a more free, without constraint, without trying to box me into a corner. And we were painting, and she was teaching me colors, and we were using acrylic. And I didn't realize it at the time, but acrylic is one of the toughest paints to paint with because it dries really quick and there's a lot of manipulations that you have to do in the painting. So it becomes very difficult. I find water painting difficult. I didn't really paint oil painting, but I can see, I don't know. I love acrylic because for me, it was easy to play with. And as we were sitting there painting and painting, and we're kind of going through this, and one of the things that we were doing was that she was teaching me, and this is a part of lessons of life that I don't think a lot of people understand until you actually get into it. And one of the things is that she didn't put any constraints on me. She didn't challenge me in saying, well, this is not the right way or that's the wrong way. She just allowed me to express myself. And this is why I love about arts. It doesn't matter, like that painting up there that I showed you. I just did it because I was just learning how to do the techniques. I was like understanding the techniques. I was trying to figure that out. And then on top of that, she was just saying she would guide me, but she allowed me the freedom to do that. And that's what writing's about. And that's what art's about. And allows me to be free. And I was like, so cool about that. And let me just give me 1 second. I'm going to get you that painting. So as we are, sorry, I meant to go there, but I thought this would be a cool example of what, when you give people and this is what I've tried to do on Substack, is that lesson that I've learned is to give back in a way that allows people to express themselves. And there's a lot of writers on here that don't write. There's a lot of people are afraid to put their stuff out there because they're afraid to be criticized or whatever. Now, I'm a guinea pig. I'll talk about my divorce to a certain extent. I try not to name people's names. I'll talk about my condition, and I'll give you guys an update here of what's going on, and hopefully that gives you guys a little bit of like silliness, a little bit of calmness about where I'm at in my life with that. But so I try to promote them because I think some of their writings they have that insight of what to write. They just need to be encouraged. And this is what she did for me. She allowed me to do it. And so, like I said, when she showed me when I showed her the picture, you could tell the expression. It's like, there's no way, kid, you're going to do that. There's no way. And like, she's like in her 70s, and I'm like, she's an art teacher and all this, and I'm kind of like painting. So this is, oh, wrong way. This is the painting, my first ever painting. And it's called Tennessee Sunset. Now, she actually said, we need to finish it. And I said, no, we're good. I love this where we're at. And you can see the different colors. You can see there's a little bit of gold in the grass. The sun is not quite defined. It's sort of like this abstract type painting, but kind of like it allows you to kind of visualize where you're at. And it's a good point. I think it's a good perspective of life. Not everything has to be perfect. And that's what writing's about. You don't have to be perfect. It's not something you have to do. And let me just add this. So today I wrote a story about just writing for the sake of writing. And I'm doing that now once a month. It's kind of like sharing some of my experiences and what I've learned in the past to help you, encourage you to write. And because I think the more we communicate, the better we understand each other. Seek to understand before you understood. And that's a really common thing that I think we should all try to do, strive to do, is to really understand each other. And that's one thing. As I was playing around with painting and all that, so as I was traveling, so during the pandemic, it was like during September, which, like I said, there was a lot of things going on in my life, and I booked a trip. And I wanted to go to England, and I wanted to go to France. So I booked a trip. It was a solo trip, and I did a solo trip. I do a lot of solo trips. I was really in my younger age. And the cool thing was I always went to do, I would go backpack. I would travel across the United States. I would travel across Canada. I'd go to Europe. I'd go there. I went to Mexico a couple of times. But but I always loved Europe. Europe is like my favorite place to go because, well, first I'm from there, but more importantly, I just love culture. I love the architecture. I love how the food, I'm a food fanatic. I love food. And so I started to kind of so I went to London by myself and I found a place to stay at a motel, and I had no clue where I was, didn't know what was going on, booked it. And I remember paying close to maybe $800 in total, or almost $1,000 in total, like flight and everything else. And everything was the seat of my pants. And the first few weeks, the first few days was just learning how to go anywhere and doing things. And I kind of like fell in love with myself then again. I fell in love with myself of experiencing things that I love doing, was to travel, learning about new things, new people, and looking at buildings, and got to see the Roman wall, all these little things that typically, like the Big Ben, all these things that not a lot of people do. I mean, and it's not that they don't want to do it. It's just a lot of people don't do it. They don't experience it. But the thing, what I was looking for is more of a self-discovery. And that's when I really started to write about stuff. And I wrote in my journal on a constant basis, maybe 3-4 times a day. I would sit there and reflect on life and just everything like that. And that helped me understand that, part of writing and writing and painting at the time, and I was starting playing the piano again. I was kind of like getting back into a position where I was expressing myself that I was not able to express beforehand. And what I mean by that is, when you can't express yourself, you're confined based on social conditions, meaning that you are not acting the way you should be acting. You should act this way. And we get a lot of constraints that way in life. A lot of people put that on us. And good or bad, it's always ends up to be bad, because you're fighting against your natural currents of who you are, that inner child, that person that you want to be happy, because that person inside you wants to be happy, and you're conflicted all the time. That's where all these people get conflicted. And so when you're working yourself through that, that's pretty hard. So when I was in England traveling, and met a few family members there, which was kind of cool. You start to learn about life, and I started revisiting things that I missed as a person, because sometimes we tend to go away from our actual center of who we are as a person, and we forget about it, and we try to live this facade of a life, and it doesn't always work. I mean, it could be successful, but it can be also very detrimental to your being. And then usually you crash. And that's what happens to me a couple times. And that's where I've learned to, so the arts is where I express myself. And one of the things I did was, the story is, I went to a Canadian bar, or a bunch of Canadians in a bar in London. And one of the things I wanted to do was go to Paris. And I said, I'm going to Paris. And my friend Donna now, we've now been friends for over 5 years. She's actually she came back to Canada and went back home, back to London. And we talked about, it was like 4 or 5 of us drinking beers, just chilling out. And I said, I'm going to Paris tomorrow. She goes, can I come? I said, absolutely. And I said, well, the train leaves at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'll see you then. And by that time, it was already like 11 o'clock. Okay. And we had a few pints in us, and I didn't think she was going to show up, but I did. I went there. She happened to show up, which was awesome. And we paid the ticket to go. And within a couple hours, we took the speed train there. And in a couple hours, we ended up in Paris. And we said, and by the way, we sat down on the train. We said, okay, we're going to do this in a day. Let's pick a couple of the places that we really wanted to see. One of the places she really wanted to see was the Chanel store, or the Chanel the apartment, things like that. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And so we went there. And so she goes, you coming in? And I was like, no, this is all you. This is your experience. Enjoy it, have fun. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to figure out the next place we want to go. So we went to the Arch. Then we ended up going to the Alpha Tower. We sat down, and to get there, the cool part was we had to get a baguette and a bottle of wine. That was the two requirements that I needed to do to have a lunch at the Alpha Tower underneath it and have like a picnic. And we were sitting there and eating, and we had a baguette. We had all this stuff. We were sitting down there, and so she was like talking about this guy that she's dating in London, who, for the most part, wasn't a good partner for her. And there was a lot of complaints about it. And I'm sitting there going, and this is where the reflection of life is, where you sit there and you're looking up and you're going, my God, you know, all my life I wanted to come here. And this is so surreal, like the Northern Lights. This is so surreal. This is unbelievable. This is great. And I sat there and I looked up and I was like, you know, Donna, how many times have you ever seen the Alpha Tower from Toronto, Canada? And she goes, this is my first time. And I said, well, then why not enjoy it? I said, that person, you can deal with it when you go back to London. Right now, let's just enjoy this. And so we did. We enjoyed our time there. It was kind of cool. And then we were drinking the bottle. Like, we didn't have a bottle opener, so I got a ballpoint pen out of my notebook, and I popped the cork into it. And she goes, "That's going to ruin the wine." I said, "It doesn't matter. We're going to drink it anyways." So we're sitting there enjoying wine. We're drinking baguette, and we're just sitting there, just taking it all in. And just to get there, I was thinking about all the things that took me to get there, was all the obstacles, all the challenges, the frustrations, the anger, the fights that I had with people sometimes just to get there, and the joy and all the people. And then I kind of felt, I wish my kids were there. I wish they got the chance to see this themselves. But the cool thing was, life is not always a perfect line. When you look back, you're going to look back the zigzags. You're going to see the dots in there and how you got there. And that's what life is about. It's about the journey. It's about the recognition. It's about those little moments that we forget, we ignore, and we choose not to do that. We choose to bypass it. We try to skip it. We try to figure it out faster. Like, we're trying to look for shortcuts rather than just living the present, taking care of that moment and experience it, whatever that feels. It might be pain. It might be laughter. It might be a heartbreak. It might be whatever that is. You have to experience it, because the next step after that can open up to a whole new world. That's why letting go is so important. That's why so much of letting go, and that's part of my writing, is about letting go, about taking care of self before you start taking care of other people, working on your care, on your development, on you, because really at the end of the day, all we have is yourself. And you can, I could have played victimhood multiple times in my life, but I chose not to, and I chose to move forward. And when I sat there under the Alpha Tower and I looked up and I said, my God, this is a moment of celebration of all the pain that I went through, all the joy, all those wonderful moments. This is something that I deserve, not from a selfish point of view or ego. It's just a recognition of getting there. And that was the most important time of my life. And another thing, I don't know if you guys knew this, and sorry for jumping on the stories, but one of my quests has always been to go to each of Hemingway is one of my favorite writers, and I follow Hemingway. I try to write a little bit like Hemingway, not quite like him, but He was in Italy. He was part of the World War One. He traveled around where my family is from, and he was an ambulance driver who hung out with a Rinaldo, or with a Rinaldi, and I don't know if it's Rinaldo or not, but he had a friend named Rinaldo, and he hung out. He was the ambulance driver. The military of the U.S. Army's uh, kitchen was in the backyard of our farm or villa, where you want to call it, and that's where he was going in back and forth. So I was always keen. So one of the things I wanted to do was always visit every place he lived, and so it had an opportunity. I wanted to see where he lived, and I went to that place, and we made our way down there. There's a couple of places that we stopped along the way, but this was one of the major places that I wanted to visit before we headed home. And um, I went. We came into this plaza, and immediately I just had this image of 1920s. Thinking about all the artists of all the, I mean, that was just, I can't imagine living in that era. I mean, the closest thing that comes to that moment in time, I would have to, Midnight in Paradise. If you ever watched that, was a Woody's movie. It, that is probably the closest things that you could ever get to imagine that type of lifestyle. You had Fitzgerald, you had all these famous, Monet, all these people in that time period who became highly recognized authors and artists, and their stuff was being sold in hundreds and thousands of dollars. It's just, I mean, like, it's just crazy. And so when we were walking in through that place, it was one of those things that just like threw me back, and I can remember it. I can remember it today. It was a very warm, kind, relaxing day. You come into the plaza, you had people in the coffee shops. There were 2 or 3 coffee shops, people out there having coffee. You can hear the clings of the glasses. You could hear the people talking about certain things in the Parisian way. You can hear the music playing, and the feel of it, the like the like it was just almost in a way that it took you back in time, of a forgotten time. And you sat there and you just couldn't figure out how to absorb it. And we get to the door, and it's a blue door, and it has Hemingway's things. And even though it was a door, the cats were around, because you had cats everywhere. The Hemingway cats do exist. And I sat there and I looked at the door, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Kind of looking at it going, you know, kind of like, okay, that's it. But then I went back into the plaza, and the guy was playing a harmonica. An old guy, white hat with a black trim around his hat, glasses, wearing a green suit. I think he was wearing a black tie, white short, and he's playing the harmonica. And the rhythm of the music, and the just the feel of it, just the in and out of how he was playing the horn, like back and forth. And it was a typical music of Paris, of one of the older style music. That kind of just, and I forgot the name, I apologize. But he was like kind of going back and forth. And you can see the smile on his face, and the clicking of the glasses. The people are talking, the people moving in the plaza. And in that moment, I sat, and it was hard. I took it in. And like I said, it was hard to take it in. It was hard to digest it, because it was not something I've never experienced before. Another milestone in my life. I made it to Hemingway in Paris. And I was sitting there and just taking it in, smelling the bread, the coffee, the espressos, the people, the afternoon sun coming down. You can feel the warmth of the sun and the rays, and you can feel the glow and the moment of that rawness that you can't explain. And you sit there just pondering. And in that moment, Donna shows up and she goes, I wish I had my camera with me. And I said, what's wrong? She goes, you look like a child in a candy store. And that was, I guess that was the best description of that moment for me. So you see, life doesn't have to be explained fully, because in that moment, someone told me how I was feeling, not in a negative way. I mean, a way is like, this is what I see in you. Just like the artist in that teacher, she took the moment and said, this is what I see in you. In these moments when we travel or we experience in art and all that, there are moments that you're expressing yourself, but you're also showing things in a way that you can express in different ways. And in that moment, I was expressing it probably in a way that I couldn't put it in words, and I couldn't put it in a painting. But obviously, my facial experience, facial was experiencing something that I was still trying to process. So in that whole thing, so I started painting about Paris, and one of the things I did was this one here. Two lovers in a rainy day on actually spring, because you have the blossoms. And one of the beautiful things of Paris is that they have flowers on every single windowsill. I can't believe the amount of flowers, and the city is gorgeous to begin with, and the architectural, the just the layout, the fun, the walking. I mean, we walked over 20 miles that day, and that was kind of cool. Another painting that I did was something like this. That's another painting of mine. And as you can see, I'm painting a little different as I go. And I painted that. So that trip actually ended up back in London, and Donna went back to her guy, and I don't know what I think they ended it up. Excuse me, after that. So that's what happened there. But we're still friends. I think she's back in London, hanging out with her cousins and things like that. And I think she's also, well, and sweet lady, great lady, a fun traveling partner at the time. And it's strange how sometimes things don't really, like, if you're really free in those moments, it it's weird how certain things come in so naturally in your life. And that was a very natural progression in that situation. So there's that. Let me just double check, see if I can see her. Nope, she has not come in. Like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to drop it into the chat. More than willing to answer it. If you have any questions or comments, things like that, please let me know. Love to hear from you. Like I said, Grace was supposed to be on, but I'm sure she's running I think she's on a little bit. She probably has some issues, and she is running in between appointments. So we'll reschedule this another time. In the meantime, I'm here. If you feel free to ask. The thing that, and then that trip, I came back home, and trips change you as a person. It changes you because especially trips like that, solo trips, they change you because you were seeking something, not a significant change, but I can tell certain things weren't, like, when I came back home, I wasn't really, I wanted more in life. I wanted more in the sense of myself, and I wanted to redefine who I am, which I was shedding a lot of that preconditioned things that were putting on top of me. And that's where I started to, discover the arts and going through there. Now, when I started to write, I really started to write more of, and that's where I found Substack. Honestly, I jumped on Substack and I started reading a bunch of people and things like that. And I was like, what's Substack? What's all that about? And it took a time for me to figure it out. And I didn't really start writing about maybe 2022, late 2022. And I was already on it for like a couple years. And, I talk about the old days because back then there wasn't much, way to get subscribers or readers. Notes, I don't think Notes was part of it yet. Podcast just came in. So there's a lot of things that are happening now that is kind of cool. And so when I started writing, I really started writing about inspirational stories because I wanted to read positive stories, not stories of the news or the things like that, because we were missing. And I think that came back, that actually came from the days of the newspaper business industry that I used to work in, where we always wrote a positive story in there. And I guess that's where my influence came from, was writing about people in a positive light and talk about them and try to explain their story in a very positive light rather than trying to trash people all the time. That's what most newspapers today's are, and that's what most online stuff is. Just, it doesn't really matter. It's about, I don't know, it's the trash, and I call it trash, and you have to read through it and kind of figure out what they're trying to say. And most of the time the headlines are what really hurts the readers. So I took it upon myself to think about it as what would be the best way, trying to figure out how to do that. And Grace just put a message in. I'm sorry, Grace. I shot you a chat. I don't know if you can come in, but if it doesn't work out, we can always reschedule. So I'm sorry. So just let me know when, if you want to jump on, you're able to jump on, please do, and we'll continue the podcast. But in the meantime, when I started writing, I didn't write for anybody. I just really wrote for myself because I wanted something positive. I wanted something to, yep, I threw it in the chat. So you're there. You got to click on the chat. Sorry. Oh. Anyways, hey, Grace, if you can go on the chat in Substack, there's a link for you to get in here. Sorry, everybody. We're trying to organize ourselves here. So, okay, great. Thanks, Grace. So when I wrote the inspirational stories, I wasn't thinking about it as a way to, I was more writing it in the fake because I didn't see positive stories. I wanted to put positivity out there. I wanted to put a new delight on there. And that writing really at the end of the day wasn't really me writing. It was more of me just being a machine writing. I guess that's the best way to put it. Oh, now we have Grace. Hey, how you doing? Thank you. Sorry about that.
No, I'm sorry. I just assumed that you would add me there. I didn't check my messages.
Yeah, we're using the stream, so we're doing that. So, but that's okay. I spent time talking about us, about writing and all that stuff. So hopefully that helps some people. But I'm glad you're here. That's number one. Number two, I admire what you've done on Substack, and it's been great. And we've collaborated before, and I just love how you're so positive on Substack. And I really wanted to interview you and talk more about you as a writer and how you use it. And I know your story has changed. You were living in Germany, now you live in Costa Rica, which is an awesome thing to do. So just kind of explain who you are for the audience, just in case they don't know who you are and what's going on.
Yay! Yeah, thank you for inviting me on. Yeah. It's so funny actually meeting face to face when we've like written things together, right?
Yes.
Yeah, also funny that you've known me before I came to Costa Rica. Like you've seen the whole process of me just breaking through, basically. Breaking down, breaking through.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. A year ago was when I went through a breakup and was coming to the end of my studies to be a kindergarten teacher. I would have never thought just a year ago, John, that I would be here. Like, it's crazy, isn't it? When you really sometimes look back, it's like, I would never have imagined this. But for the better, I am very, very grateful to be here. I feel so at home. I mean, we can feel home in many various places. But yeah, so then I recalibrated with myself through, you know, the means of journaling and writing. As always, it's like always been my one of my biggest practices to bring myself back to me. And and then I started just like dreaming and meditating with Costa Rica and like the beach. And I've never lived near the beach ever in my life, like near the sea. I'm more of a mountain forest girl, so it was like really funny. And I was like, okay, well, this isn't just like happening for no reason, right? Yeah. And as I always do, I followed my heart and I just went through and I was like, well, if this was what God wants me to do, I'll trust. And then, as the cliche goes, all the doors opened for me. so then I just came.
Awesome. Where did you live in Germany before you came to Costa Rica?
I was living in the south, in Stuttgart, in the southwest.
Yeah.
So completely different, like landscape in terms of, like, you know, more fields and also completely different culture, obviously, but
that's another story. Yeah. You were close to the Black Forest, right? Is that okay? Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I traveled. I lived in Germany for a year. I don't know if you knew that.
Nice.
In that south of Frankfurt, and called Demestal. Demestal is that? I guess I forgot how to say it these days, but yeah, that was the culture completely different. It was very, very orderly, I guess is the best way of putting it. It wasn't, you weren't expected to be more than just that. Like change was hard. You maintained a life and that's how it was. So now you're in Costa Rica. I mean, so you were writing, when you started writing on Substack?
I started in November 2024 on Substack. Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. After having like a year break from writing online, because I was on Medium beforehand. And then I just had a nudge again, like go back, like, and then Substack, someone told, like 3 people told me, and it always works in 3 for me, where I'm just like, okay, now is the time to take action. Yeah. So as yourself, like Substack is just such a vulnerable, like open, but comforting space to be as a writer. Medium wasn't really. Medium was more like vigorous with like, anyway, just different, you know, dynamics. But Substack just hugged me at the right time, and it just felt like, oh, this is great. Like I can be me in my writing style and be like seen, and also like bring that impact through vulnerability, which is my superpower and everyone's superpower.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, no, I was on Tumblr. I tried X to write on X, and that was challenging. because it has its own, it's echo chambers big time. But coming on Substack, one of the things, like you're right, it's so vulnerable. Like you could be open and honest with yourself and not feel like you had to play in a box. And that was the biggest problem with other social media. Is like Facebook is
Yeah.
a prime example where your family and friends will sit there and be like, "You're not a writer. What are you doing? Like, what are you publishing books for?" And it's like, what do you mean? Like, I can't do that. Like, it was like they already had this preconditioned thought process. But when you come on here, it doesn't really have that stigma. It really allows you to be yourself, raw, honest, and genuine. And
Yeah.
that's how a lot of people come across. Now, I've encountered people that, have you ever encountered anybody who's just been rude to you on Substack? Because
Only one person, but it was kind of triggered from a comment, but very, yeah, it's okay, you know. But it's like very rare because I do feel like it's a space where if you're able to like open up from your soul and your heart, then it's an art in actually like seeing others do that. And then I think you're able to like more, you know, just let those juices flow. Whereas like you say other social media platforms, it's a bit like Germany with like that structure, that standard that's expected of you.
Yeah.
And then literally like also when I came to Costa Rica, that's just dispersed. And I was just like, oh my gosh, especially as a kindergarten teacher, it's like all that I just learned. And then you just have to kind of like find your balance between the both. Just basically like, yeah.
So Costa Rica is a lot more open to free will, I guess. Is that the best way to put it? Like you're able to, not, I wouldn't say free will in the sense of like crazy, but the expressions, I mean, is there like obviously a lot more artists down there? Is that what I'm understanding? Like I've never been to Costa Rica, so I'm living through your experience. So
oh yeah, well, free will, I guess I would more interpret it as freedom. Like I've really noticed also a lot of Americans come here to live their freedom, like to seek their freedom, to be free, and to be everything you want to be in a way that like the nature can hold you. And there's just so much beauty in people and all around you, and opportunities. But in the sense of like what I mentioned with like the kindergarten teacher, like structural is more like, I've also noticed within that, which I never noticed before because I've always been a nature lover, but within being next to the sea, it brings a whole other energy with it. So the kids can be quite, don't want to say wild, but wild. And so it's like, it was hard for me to kind of like just take a step back and just be like, okay, how am I supposed to like bring this like structure in? Because it's really healthy for the children, obviously, as well, right? Like to have a good, healthy dynamic and rituals and all of that, as well as allow them the space to discover and explore in like a crazy kind of nature here. Because it's so extreme here, John. Like I arrived when it was like rainy season, so it was like crazy. And then like, yeah, and then the extreme heat. So I feel like it's just a place of extreme. And with that, the energy reflects and shows. So that's something I've been really like treating myself with grace about, like just, you know, flowing with that as much as I can.
So the children, like, okay, why did you get into kindergarten? What was the reason behind that? Was there a trigger, or there was somebody helping you? Like, is there a mentor down the road that said, you know, or what made you become what decided to take that career?
It's so funny because it's like when I was 18, I like moved out of my like, you know, home like with parents and went to Spain to be an au pair.
Okay.
And I originally wanted to go to Costa Rica. So like Costa Rica's always been on my heart to come to. It's like my soul has always wanted it. So I stayed a bit close to home and went to Spain, but I loved it. Like I had a year experience with this family and I was an au pair and, you know, taking care after them and da-da-da. But then I wanted to actually originally study like psychology, childhood studies, but my grades weren't that good in biology, I remember. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to study journalism because it's my next best thing. Like I love writing. and Spanish. So I studied journalism and Spanish. But then after that, like I always had children like in my career path. Like I taught yoga, I taught English as a foreign language. So I've always worked with children in the past decade. And even in my book, I write a lot about like, you know, how we can learn from children in like their most curious state, you know. So they've always fascinated me. But then after I went through my mental breakdown, it was like, oh, I want to do something new again. And it like, yeah, it was like a kind of a perfect opportunity for me to study again, you know, like start from scratch, so to say. So that's when I studied for 3 years kindergarten teaching in Germany, which is a great place to do it because it's where kindergarten is from. They like made it there, you know, and Waldorf, which I'm in that education here. So that's how I got to it in the end. And you know, I'm doing a revised edition of my self-help book 5 years later. It's kind of like therapy for me. And I was like writing it and I was just like, oh my gosh, like I've always like meant to be a kindergarten teacher. Like, you know, it's so funny how it then comes back around, and you're never too late. You know, I had that like the past 2 years. It's like, oh, why didn't I? Like I should have. And it's like, no, Grace, like it's all in good timing. Like you just center yourself back. It's all meant to be right now, you know?
Right.
So
And I talk about, as you were talking, I was talking about my experiences in traveling, and it's about the moments, taking them in, good or bad. You take them in.
yeah.
You kind of like die, like the old Japanese. Like I was dealing with a mentor who was an old Japanese businessman, and his attitude was every time he did a business transaction, he would never say yes right away. He would say, I need to sit on it and I'll get back to you tomorrow. And he would sit on it and digest it. And like he said, he physically swallowed it. And he kind of like took it in to see how he felt and how he, good or bad, like he just took it in, and then he made a decision and either the next day or a couple of days. And then that's how he did business. And I asked him, I said, why do you have to digest that? He goes, because life is about digestion. It's about those moments. It's about everything you do. Life is about consumption. Life lives through you, not for you, lives through you. And so if you live, you have to accept what comes with life, good or bad. And I kind of like, I didn't really understand it at the time, but now I understand it. It's more like, okay, life does live through you. It doesn't live for you. And most people think when you let life live for you, what happens is you're becoming more of a victim. You're becoming more of a strain of society, or you're doing things that are addiction and things like that. When you live life through you, you're more passionate, you're more compassion, you're more purposeful, like you live more for the moments. And that's what I'm hearing from you. And that's huge. Now, you talked about your breakdown. Was it really a breakdown, or was just a readjustment, or how would you, or
Oh no, it was a full on breakdown. I was I'm not gonna like, you know, dampen that. I was in the mental clinic for more than half a year.
oh,
I think I wrote a piece about it. Yeah.
I did read about it, but when was that? Is it just recently, or was it just before?
No. So in the timeline of things, it was during Corona, so like 2020. Now in hindsight and going through therapy, like afterwards, like I really do notice it was because I was like pushing all my own emotions down. Like I'd lost my grandmother, my parents broke up, I went through a breakup, I lost my job. Like I went through so many things at once, but I kept going. I kept teaching yoga, ironically enough. I kept being the healer, ironically enough, and didn't give myself space, right? Because I've just always been that. I mean, as women, I think we just have this bigger role to just like be this giver, right? This caretaker. And that's just always something I've been, like this light to others. And then at that moment, I didn't know what it really meant, like to fill up your cup. Like I was just like giving.
Yeah.
And yeah, eventually then went through this psychosis in Berlin, which if you've been to Berlin, I think you can kind of understand more, because it's like a very like dark but light space. Like people that are creators go there. I mean, who's that singer that went big one.
Sting? No, that would have been David Bowie was there.
Yes, that's the one. David Bowie. Like, it just says so much in it, right? Like, that's where he went to really get his career going. Like, it's like the creative hub, I would say. However, you can lose yourself in it, which I did. And yeah, it was hard, but it was like it was meant to happen. Like, I really do see my life as that. Like, I really liked how you just described that too. Like, it really is just about digesting everything and accepting it all. Like, it's like detachment allows you to notice like it's all working for you and not against you. But also, as you just said, like, majority of people basically live in that victim role that you just said.
Yeah.
It's like everyone is like in standby mode now, and I don't blame them, because our media, you know, like, it's just out for us to fuel our ego with fear. And so when you, like, you know, take that step back, which I've always done, I have to say, since I was very young, just been able to like return to myself and give myself moments of like listen, pray to God, like reconnect with my intuition, that then I don't just make these like, you know, in like decisions right away, but also know when it's best for me. But yeah, anyway, that moment of my life was hard because I had a lot of guilt, which is like the worst emotion to carry.
Yes. Yeah.
Don't carry it if you're listening. Just rid it with love. Like, literally, you have nothing to be guilty about and for. Like, just, there's just no need for it. Like, it could swallow you up.
The problem is letting go. When you don't let go, I think that's part of the problem in life, or for most people, because
For most people, yeah.
So they hold on to these narratives, these stories, these
Totally.
traditions and things like that. I mean, I know people for 50 plus years who hold on to stories that happened once 50 years ago, and they still playing that story over and over again. And they play this thing where they trying to justify their existence by this person's action. And I'm like sitting there going to myself, you're crazy. Like, get over it. That person, like, I remember I was talking to somebody, and we were I haven't seen them for a couple years. I come visit, and you can sense, like, when you get to a point where in life you sense things quicker. Like, I've experienced, you know, I
Yeah,
don't
you
know
can
if you're
feel the energy of someone.
Yeah, I don't know if your energy. I don't know if you can feel as much as I, because when you do yoga and you do meditation, you pray, you do all those things, like we'll pray or whatever. Every time you do a meditation or you pray or whatever you do, you're taking time to kind of like go in and trying to think it through, and then your senses get heightened up pretty fast, or pretty much, especially through traumatic moments and things like that. So anyways, I had a couple of traumatic situations. I can, like, not breakdowns, but, well, I mean, sort of breakdowns. I can tell you that. I'm going to tell that story another time, Bill. But I went to go travel back, went to go visit them, and you can sense that there was an issue. And I said, what's the problem here? And they said, well, you did this 2 years ago, blah, blah, blah. I was like, in your head, you were talking to yourself about something I did 2 years ago. Why didn't you pick the phone up and call me and tell me, hey, that was a problem, I didn't like it, and I would have apologized? But yet you had this conversation with yourself for 2 years, and I was not part of it. So how can you blame me for something that I did 2 years ago if you weren't willing to resolve it then? That's when people don't let go. Like the best thing to do is just let it go fast as possible and just move on. Now, sometimes it's hard to let go of certain things because how people do, but sometimes letting go is letting go. And it's probably one of the hardest things you can ever do in life, is to let go of past stories, because you're anchoring yourself to that. That's an attachment. That's carrying if you're thinking about imaging, that's carrying the suitcases. That's your patch. That's all those emotional baggage that you want to carry on. And some of us get to a point where, and I can tell you myself, I've experienced it, where you bury it, you just keep moving, you keep moving. And if you don't say anything, it's going to boil up. And once it boils up, it can be very, very destructive.
Oh,
It
for sure.
puts you in a position where you go from another. So I understand what you're saying. And, so that's 2000. And then you started writing around 2022, right? On Substack. What was like
2024.
2024? I apologize.
Mm-hmm.
So in between then you were writing, and when you got on Substack, were you kind of like sharing your experiences, or did you just start it out kind of like writing fluff stuff like I did?
Fluff stuff. I've always been, let's say, very intentional with my writing, which doesn't mean that I'm better, by the way, in any way. Like, fluff stuff is also amazing. But I wrote my self-help book nearly a decade ago, which is incredible, crazy. At 21, when I lost my best friend. And it was from there that writing really became not just a passion, but something that I'm like dedicating myself to for the greater good of humanity, basically. Because I think up until then, it was always like journaling and writing. But then when I really wrote that book, but only then, ironically, 5 years later from the mental clinic, self-published it because it was on the back burner, imposter syndrome, blah, blah, blah. And then, now I'm, bringing out this second revised edition. I then came onto Substack thinking, honestly, at that moment, John, it was more for like me, myself, and I to just share, because I'd noticed that I missed it. Like, I missed just publishing like stuff online. No, I don't want to say just publishing stuff online. I missed bringing an impact with my words, because I've always impacted positively people's lives, and like that's such a blessing and that's such an honor that I can have that light, which we all do. I feel we're all writers at heart, we're all artists at heart, right? It's just up to you if you nurture and cultivate it still. And because I luckily have, it was like, I was studying, and it was like just getting a bit monotone for me, that I was like, I want my passion again. And so I remember, I think my first piece on Substack was like why I took a break from writing online. And it was the best thing I could do. Because when you are online, it's also one of those things that like you can fuel your ego, and you really have to be careful with that. It's like, what is your mission? What is your intention? Like, you're bettering other people's lives by sharing your story, in essence, right? And so I noticed, like, post breakdown and like writing on Medium, that it was more of just like me wanting like validation, or just wanting like, And so when I came like in 2024 on Substack, I had more of like this mission in my head, like, okay, monthly mottos. I know what I want to do. I was more structured in like just what I'm like putting out there. And that's how Mindful Moments, that's what originally my newsletter was called, because I've always been a very mindful person. And I find it so incredible that mindfulness is so big now, because that's always been for me so natural. And my friends have always said that to me, like, Grace, you're always the one that has told me to look up at the sky. You're always the one that's told me to like reset. And yeah, it's really cute. And I'm like, oh yeah, thank you. It's true. So I wanted to bring mindful moments to people, to bring them back to themselves, because we're in a real like loneliness epidemic. We're in real like struggles, right? And so, and then that kind of came through, and it just came very naturally. But you know what it's like, John? Like, when you listen to your intuition and you just land somewhere and you really just trust in what you're writing, then everything will work for you. And so I was just like, yeah, I'm here, and and wanted to connect. And then I just found such amazing people reading, I remember still reading your article, and I was like, wow, like, I love it when people are just so vulnerable. Like, it just makes me so high. Like, I'm like, oh, this is the best. Because you just make other people feel more understood through it, right? And so then that's when I was like, yeah, this is my platform, and I'm going to take it real now, and like, bring my newsletter like as a business. And now, like, I've changed to Live with Grace. I don't know if you've noticed. So Mindful Moments has evolved into Live with Grace, because it's something also that I learned here in my first 6 months of being in Costa Rica. That need, like, oh, I need to show up every week, like every Monday, because I've just done that for the past year. And it's like, Grace, just live. Like, experiences are your wealth. and always have been,
Right.
of wisdom.
Yeah.
And I really felt God just saying, like, just surrender and just rest and do what you got to do here, and then you'll come back. And then I came back in January with like this whole, they say like, and it all landed. I was like, okay, now is the time for me to really like speak, not just to everyone, which I always have, but speak to the mothers especially, because I work with children and I see that they're all like attracted to this energy of me. Because rest, a lot of women forget to rest, John. Not just women, everyone forgets to rest. And like my book, Chill Out and Cheer Up, there's always been that. It's like, just chill out. And I've always been the one that tells everyone, just go with the flow, just chill out. And now I'm like, okay, yeah. Like, more people need to remember that. Like you were saying, like, people get too much in their heads. And like your friend just took this whole, like, who knows what you said. It could have even been one word, and just like made it out into this whole show in their heads. Like, it's crazy. Your head, your mind can work against you. And I've had it work against me. That now I'm like, it can work for you too, right?
Yeah. No, definitely. So just to let you know, I did miss you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did. Like, I was looking for you sometimes. It was hard, because I did read your stuff, and it was hard to find you. And I kind of knew you had a break. I knew you were going to Costa Rica. I kind of knew you were kind of like, you were sorting your life out, and it was really abrupt, not in a negative way. I knew you wrote something about, hey, I'm going to Costa Rica. It's going to take me to kind of like adjust, and I left that, I let it be and let you kind of go through. But I did, I'm great that you're back and writing again and so forth. That's I'm great to seeing you again, and that's awesome. So thank you for coming back. Because you always had this, your writing always had this a little bit of a philosophy behind it, in a way that you were seeking more of a understanding of either an issue or life itself, whatever that looked like. You were always trying to find meaning behind it, and you were trying to describe it. And in that, you were trying to make sense of it. And you've kind of and that was sort of like your right. That was sort of, I don't know if you knew that, but that was sort of like the bulk of your writing, where you were trying to explain. It was like more of a beacon of hope, to other people. You were showing other people how to, you're going to face challenges, you're going to face whatever. And some of it is, these struggles you have to go through. And that's where I thought your writing was really cool and really neat. Now when you're like, since 2024 to now, do you think your writing has changed more into more evolved, or how would you call it today versus what it was before?
Well, firstly, thank you. That's really touching. We can never underestimate the power of our presence, right?
Yeah.
So I would say our writing is always evolving, because we are human beings, so we're always changing, like, every day.
Right.
It's funny you asked that, because now I'm like going through the second revised edition of my book that I wrote when I was 22, 23. Now I'm 31. It's like, now I really can tell, like, it was more of just like this subconscious like mind dump on paper, how my style. And I always remember my journalist lecturer telling me, like, shorter sentences, Grace. And I was like, no. I love alliteration. I love being long-winded. But now I'm like, okay, for the good of the people and like attention spans these days, right? It's like, it's better to be like, I really like the one.
I call it choppy writing.
It is. It's choppy to the point. Yeah. And because I like the one that you wrote about, us coming together now the other day. And it's like, just, you do just develop like your own way of like putting things and noticing, like, oh, then people can read this. It's just also more flowing, right? The fluidity of your writing. I would say also, just due to our like technology mad society these days, has also come along with that.
Yeah.
So I would say now, like, since 2024, I'm more like, I know who I'm talking to and I know like how to put a point straight. And like you say, it is true. I've always been like that in my life. Like I know there's always deeper meaning in everything. So I've always been that one to remind others around me, to remind myself, like, it's not about seeking on the outside. You have all the answers within. And just like attuning to that. It's just like a radio, right? I think we're all on the wrong frequency these days because there's so many frequencies that we need to just like rewire ourselves back to our center, which is so hard, I get. But John, this is crazy. Like I only realized this the other day because it's March now, right? It's been a year since I've not watched any TV.
Wow, that's huge.
I know, right? I was like, I need to write an article about this. Like, I swear my attention is like, I mean, I've always been very attentive, right?
Yeah.
But like, I'm just so, it's incredible, like the difference. Like, not to say that I don't chill out, like I just read now more.
Yeah.
And I don't miss it necessarily. Like it's good. Like I don't want to say like there's anything against it, and I don't, we don't all have to be so radical as I am. But like it wasn't even a radical change subconsciously. It just happened because it was through my breakup that we would always like chill on the sofa and watch TV or watch Netflix. So then I think through that it just kind of happened that I like was more passionate with writing, journaling, like, retreating within. Mm-hmm. And then obviously, well, not obviously, everyone has a laptop. I've just not had the need or desire to watch videos or like, I love films, don't get me wrong, and that's something that I would like to get back into. Yeah. But I've just been living life, and I'm just like, wow, like now what I'm saying about the radio and the frequencies, I'm so much more attuned. Like, how people say to you, for example, like, I don't know, one of your children, whatever, or a friend of yours will just say to you like, oh, but don't do that because so-and-so. Or why do you think that? Because so-and-so. Like everyone tries to implant their own fear within you, right?
Yes.
It happens on a daily occasion, right? Like it's just human beings that are like, mind washed from everything politics. So I've noticed now that I'm just able to like hit it away like tennis ball, like so easy. It's incredible because I've not read the news either for a year. So it's like been the news and the TV that I've just had a complete like retreat from. And yeah, it's pretty mind blowing that I only noticed this the other day when I was on a walk on my own, like on the beach. And then I was like, wow, I've not watched anything for so long.
So I got my cable. Well, we had cable up here, 2010 or 2000. Yeah, 2010. 2011. Whereas I cut the cable, so I did not have cable since 2011. Now, and I don't really watch a lot of TV. I don't, because now I'll watch videos on my phone, like YouTube. Either I'm researching things or or I'm watching a speaker or something constructive, I would call it. It's not a waste of time, but I have it on my phone, so I do watch a lot of that. And news, it bothers me. I don't know if that makes it. It doesn't matter who it is, it just bothers me. So I spend a lot of time researching about articles, and then even them, they start bothering me now, because there's really no true when you're writing, like the old days in news articles and newscasts, like when you're writing a newspaper, the old days where you wrote a subject, you kind of bring an introduction into it, and you kind of give you a quick read of what was going on and all the players. It was more of a not a biased perspective. It was more of like non-biased. You just create facts, and then in the facts you were creating the scenario, and then the scenario, then in the conclusion was either what was the outcome. And there was really no opinion piece at all. It was all fact, the result. And that was it. There was, or introduction, facts, and the conclusion, or the result. And today it's entwined with opinions and slated, and it's constant. The writing style is more it's antagonizing, and it's harmful, and it's just antagonize to the point where when you read it, you feel triggered to the point where you go one way or another, and depending on how you felt, that's it. And so and now when you're reading articles of journalists, you're favoring one over the other. When in the old days, it didn't matter who was the journalist because you read it all, because they all had a perspective of life, and you were able to read it without going the echo chamber type down.
Mm.
So, and today, I think that's the downfall of the news media. Is it's gotten to a point where it's no more. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure we slanted a couple of news articles here and there when we were in the industry back in the in the early days, but in today's world, we're definitely not in. We're slanting every single story one way or another to influence people, and that's really about purchasing and newspapers or articles or whatever it is. I don't find that to be so. When you're searching online for me now, when I go online to look for news content to kind of get it understand what's going on, it's really snippets, and that's all I'm doing. And
Yeah.
it's hard. It's hard to get online and or watch TV and listen to people whose their true intention is to harm society, and that's how I look at it. I mean, I'm obviously a year off of all that. Going back, I mean, I don't even know how that would feel.
Yeah, kind of like in a dream, to be fair.
Yeah,
Because it's like the opposite end of like, well, obviously I still want to know, like, I don't want to be totally ignorant. Um, but it just makes me notice how much like toxicity we're fed.
yes, big
And
time.
like you say, it's like the way in which it is like fed to us these days is just to like spur us on with more fear, more anxiety, more stress. And I kind of figure, well, if I'm here to be the light that I am, then it's probably good for me to also step away from that.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah, and I also studied journalism, so like it actually put me off from being a journalist because it was just so like structured in like how like also what you're saying, like the factual side of it. Like I couldn't just be me, like, they would tell me you can't write like that. And I'm like, well, I want to, like and that's the most beautiful thing about Substack, right? Like there's no way to be. The way to be is to be yourself. Like that's the most beautiful thing that we got to be thankful for, that Substack does exist, and it is just going to get bigger and better in terms of sharing love and not ego, because it's all at the end, it's all just fueling ego. And without fear, the ego can't exist. So that's when we want to like, attune more into love. But as I said, it wasn't really like super intentional, like, oh, I'm not going to watch TV or really read the news for a year. It just kind of happened because, as you know, I went through so much change so quickly, and with my transitions and everything, that it was just like really like that. I needed that time for myself to just adjust. It was a lot, like not just another country and job, like everything was just like new. But yeah, it's funny how you have to, I think discipline is probably the biggest thing in all of this that we lack, or our society lacks so much, because it's just like you're fed like this the whole. And I see the amount of people also here that just like this the whole time. I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's so sad, that we're just so addicted to screens rather than this. Like, even though we're on our screens now, we're having a like live conversation, and that's what it feels like on Substack, right? It's not like this mindless scroll; it's a mindful scroll, because it's like people just sharing bits of their soul.
Right,
And it's
right.
like, oh, I feel that way, or oh, yeah, that's true, and it makes you think. Like, I read some things and I'm like, oh, didn't think of it like that.
Mhm.
That's what we need more of, and not people telling us how to think.
Well, the benefit of this, I mean, this like these conversations is
Uh huh.
where, I mean, I would never have known you, if, to be
Yeah.
honest, if we didn't have Substack, and I would never have known you if we didn't have Substack podcast. because we would have gone to another platform. I would have convinced you to go to another platform. We would have done it somewhere else. It would have been on Apple or something like that. And then it would have been, these little short little things. Now we have audiences from Substack, from both of our Substacks, watching and listening to us and talk and getting. And the cool thing about that is they're getting more to understand who we are as writers, and they get
Yeah, that's true.
those connections. And like I said, I missed you for a year, for the most part, right? Because I wrote an article about you about a year ago, I think,
I
something like
think
that.
it was. Yeah.
And we shared an article. We were doing a
We did a
collaboration.
collab. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was doing collabs. That was where it came from. Yeah.
And the funny thing now is, I remember how we couldn't do co-authors and you couldn't review it. Now we can. Remember, we were doing Google, and I I
We did it in Google Docs. That's
we did
like,
it in
yeah,
Google
how we
Docs,
did it. Yeah.
and now we
They
can
they
do it.
have changed a lot, right?
Yes, so that's changed a lot. So now it's completely different, and I look back of all these co-authors and all these Google Docs back and forth. Now that's kind of like changed. Now that helps us as writers to actually connect even better. But the thing is, we're doing this in this chamber of the social media that allows us to be, ourselves creatively. It allows us to be who we are. We share stories because we want others to understand that's part of life, and there's some type of light down the road that we can get to, and that
Always.
we're humans, and they can reach out to us, they communicate with us. Like the all my supporters, everybody in the community, I call it a community, is because
It is.
they all kind of like, they check in with you. They all ask questions. I mean, I get questions every day about stuff,
Oh.
which is cool because you don't usually get that, walking around, but it's nice.
I
It's
feel you. I've been talking about this. Of course, this comes up. I've been talking about this more often with people. I'm like, just ask more. Oh, I
yes,
don't really want to ask. I don't want to make them feel intimidated, or I don't want to make them feel. I'm like, just ask. Like,
yeah,
honestly, it's one of the nicest things as human beings that we show curiosity for each other.
right.
Like, right? Like,
Yeah,
just, or showing just genuine, like, curiosity, compassion, care, like asking. And it's true. Substack really does hold that space for curiosity in one another because of the fact we're sharing our stories. And like you just said, it's a very good point. I think the more you share your story, the more you fuel your passion of creativity.
yes,
And it's one of, if not the biggest thing that we're lacking when it comes to like depression and mental health issues. Because when I went through it, it was definitely like the lack of creativity, like at that period. And when I started to write again, I could just feel this like little light coming up again, within me. And it was like, oh, wow. Like, because you're just so bound by it, right? Like, you feel like it just consumes you. And I do truly believe that one of the biggest things, if not the best thing, is to share and care your story.
hmm
And just in any format, in art, in writing and music. And the more the better, because what pisses me off sometimes online is like, oh, you've only got to do one thing. I'm like, no, you don't. Like, to make a business and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, oh, but I've always wanted to do everything. Like, I love,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, now I'm
Like
going to start being a
creative.
DJ.
You want
So
to be
I'm just
creative?
like,
Yeah,
yeah. And it's like the more creative you get, the more like like the tree grows all of its
yeah, definitely.
branches. So don't ever let anyone just tell you like, oh, you just got to do that and you've got to stay into that, and then just like, that I don't agree with that.
So make sure I get your earliest book, because I'm actually trying to do a book month so I can post it in my. So one of the things I do is I create art digitally. Sometimes
Nice.
all that kind of stuff. That's all started
Uh-huh.
within the same time period when I started trying to do, you know, trying to discover myself. That's really what
Okay.
inspired me to do that.
Oh, that's
So,
beautiful.
and I kind
Uh-huh.
of had my own breakdown, which I will share later. But um, but I started to create like paintings and things like that, and I created a website, started to share those, and because people were like, well, where can I get this? And I was like, why would you want it? Right? Because I'm like, it didn't compute to me. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, are you there still? Oh, we lost connection. Oh yeah, we did lost connection. So Grace is not with. Grace has left us. I just want to let you guys know that. So she has uh, lost connections. She is in Costa Rica, so I'm not sure what's going on. In the meantime, if you have any questions for us or you have any questions for me, please feel free to chime in. We'll wait for a few more minutes to see if she's coming in. Amy Thomas, thank you for your comments. I appreciate it. Susan, and Angel, Karen, all of you, Carol, Carolyn, everybody, I thank you for coming online here. I hope she shows up. But we'll see what happens with her. Yeah. So we lost her. So that's what happens when you're in. That's what happens when you're dealing with people from across the country. Something like one of the things that she was really one of the things I really loved about what she has gone through. She was very, very frank about her, the whole mental breakdown. And that is something that I think we all I wouldn't say we all do it, but we kind of go through that period where we actually have to rediscover ourselves. And yeah. Well, anyways, I want to love to bring her back on another time. But in the meantime, I do want to say thank you for everybody coming on here. I do appreciate you guys. Just a quick reminder, Remy's started journey will start next Wednesday, and that's going to be periodically here and there, so it's not going to be all the time. I do want to mention about my health condition for most of you who are following that. I'm doing okay. I'm about 2.5 months in this, what do you call it? Restriction by the doctor. And what that means is I got limitations. I can't drive. But I'm starting to exercise and starting to walk. Well, when I say exercise, I'm walking every single day, putting the steps in to keep the heart rate in the lungs healthy again. And if most of you don't know that I had pulmonary clots in my lungs, and it was pretty, when I look back, that was, I'm not out of she's back. Well, I was about to end it, and I figured your phone died.
Well, welcome to life in the jungle, where the Wi-Fi just goes when it wants.
But I was about to close it off because I know you have to go somewhere.
Yeah, I do have to go because I'm going to be leading a women's circle soon. But yeah. I obviously wanted to come back and say bye. So.
Well, I knew you were in Costa Rica. I know the issues down there, and but I heard of the conditions down there. So, honestly, how can they connect with you? This is an opportunity if you want to connect. How do they connect with you? Through Substack? I know you have a website as well. Is that correct?
Or I'm purely on Substack with my newsletter and Instagram. Treat Yourself with Grace. And my newsletter, Live with Grace, basically shows you that it's for the overworn women, mothers that just feel they're always on the go and aren't giving themselves, a moment, because really it is in that, it doesn't have to be these whole retreats and endless yoga classes and meditation. I see that all the time and I'm like, it's beautiful, but that's also spiritual consumerism. It's like me reminding you that in those little moments, they're actually where the biggest power lies. And that's what I remind you. I just remind you to look within and remember your worth and your power and your peace. And thank you for having me on today.
Thank you. I'd love to bring you back on at another later date. In the meantime, thank you for coming on here. I totally appreciate it. And hang on and we'll close this out. Okay. Don't go anywhere. And thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.